another episode of Chatty Broads with Bekah and Jess.
Hello, broads.
We just both took like a really deep breath.
We took a deep breath for numerous reasons. First of all, we're recording this on Monday, November 2nd. So this will be coming out on Wednesday, November 4th. And yesterday started official election day. So we don't know what's going to, like, obviously by Wednesday, let's remember the votes will still be coming in.
Yeah. I mean, we might know, you know, I don't know.
I don't know. It'll take, I think, some time with all the mail-in ballots. But yeah, so obviously we're coming from a place like from the past. We have no idea what's going on. So there's a deep breath because of that. There's also a deep breath because honestly, you and I are nervous to have this conversation.
Wait. First, before we start everything, let's actually do a deep breath. And I'm saying everyone. I know there's the people like myself who are listening and you're like, I'm not actually there in person. These people don't know if I take a deep breath or not. But if you do a deep breath, it's going to make you feel better.
It's true.
And it's going to make me feel better knowing that you're doing this in the future. So just do it. You ready?
Okay.
And release. One more. See, problem solved. And
We're
just like
fine
that, now. Everything's good. No, what Jess is saying is like, yeah, we're a little anxious. For one, this has been something that an episode we've been saying we were going to put out since June.
And it's there's been a lot of it's taken different forms and shapes, right? So initially we had contacted a few people right in the wake of George Floyd's murder, and it was immediate that many of them said we need time to just process.
Yeah.
And so we were going to come back. And then when we did come back, we were like, we feel like we need a panel. We needed to have more discussion. So then we're trying to coordinate that. Different people, different times didn't work. But then when Bekah brought up, hey, let's just have broads on, it made sense. I'm like, we feel that, you know, our show, one of the things that's been our favorite thing about having Chatty Broads is that there's been this community that started. And I feel like a conversation like this is a perfect time to have broads talking to broads. Like, this is a family conversation.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest about a couple things. One, I don't think either of us have any idea how to navigate whatever the post-election results are. I think that there's going to be a lot of like unrest regardless of what the outcome is, and I don't have any idea how to begin to grapple with that or discuss it. I mean, that's just difficult in and of itself. But I think that also, you know, we've been sort of, so that's why I also think this is like a really good time for it, because regardless of the outcome, I think that this is more relevant than ever. And I also think it's nice that we did end up doing it months in the future, because a lot of the momentum and the enthusiasm surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement and just the general, the discussion about anti-racism activism has sort of, you know, died off as it happens after the initial, you know, passion following something so dramatic that, you know.
Right.
But anyway, I think we've also been just anxious because this is like a big topic for us to try to tackle, which is another reason why we're doing it in 2 parts. And you know, we always get anxious that we're going to fuck up and that we're going to do something that we're going to not say the right thing, that we're not going to cover enough perspectives, that we're going to forget. Sorry for the cricket in the background that is just popping off. But you know, there's always a worry that you're not going to get something right, that someone's going to get pissed off, that someone's going to feel like left out. And obviously we don't want any of those things to happen. And we want people to feel seen and heard, and we want to be thorough. So that's just to say that this conversation won't be perfect, but you know, we aren't perfect, but we're definitely trying, and I hope that we can all try together.
Yeah, agreed. And I think too, you know, with initially when then Bekah mentioned just having broads come on, I was thinking we're going to have a few broads and then a few guests that we select, but so many broads were willing to come on, which was just which was amazing, to the point where Bekah and I said, let's just have a conversation with broads right now. Two parts worth. We're going to have different guests next week than we're having this week. And there were so many options of people pouring in. So if, if you're not on this panel, please don't feel bad. It's just, there was an overwhelming response. We're trying to make sure that we were as inclusive as possible with all the different people, broads that came in. Also, like Bekah was saying, this is obviously not a comprehensive, unfortunately, we didn't necessarily get someone from every race and walk of life to come discuss this. So this is not going to cover.
Yeah, and just perspective, people grow up in different areas of the country and different financial situations. Yeah. So by no means are we going to be able to discuss everyone's perspective.
Right. And with that being said, again, this is going to be a 2-part. We're recording both parts today. So then when the following one comes out, we want to hear feedback, but it will have been recorded already, just so you all know. But also, if there is something that this stirs up that you're like, we need to have another episode about this, please let us know. Yeah. For example, we did have a broad who was going to be Indigenous representation today, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out. We would love to have an episode specifically about Indigenous peoples, highlighting issues. We want to have a conversation about anti-Semitism. There are these things that we want to have a conversation about in the future.
Yeah, and there's no reason we can't cover it in the future.
Exactly. But with this specific conversation, we have these amazing broads who are willing to come on. So we are going to have this episode first. Like we said, we're going to have 2 episodes, but this specific first episode, we're going to kind of have a conversation.
A general overview, right?
Yes, exactly. We're going to talk a little bit about some personal experience. Also, what is racism? Yeah, a general overview. And then our second conversation is going to be a little more education-based, law-based, but all just a group of amazing broads. I'm so excited. And also, obviously we have these panels and there's many broads, so not everyone is able to speak as much or dive into their story. So what we're planning on doing is that each of the broads are going to record on their own just, a few minutes about themselves and their story and how they've dealt with racism. And we'll put that together and make that a bonus episode.
No, but we wanted to talk more about personal experiences with racism and microaggressions. But, we're talking about so much other meat and potato stuff. We want to have a chance to get into all of that while giving each person, like you said, their shot.
Because these are an amazing group of broads. We're so thankful for all of them. So, are you ready to get into this episode, B?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's chat, broads. Well, okay, broads, here we are.
Here is the room.
We have our first panel of broads, and this is so exciting.
It's going to be interesting, that's for sure.
We, first of all, thank you so much, all of you, for being willing to come on here and share. It means so much. If you're not on the YouTube watching this, we are currently joined by 6 broads. So there are 8 broads in this house.
Not including
there are
us.
8 broads in this house. We are Broad Squad strong. So getting right into it, can we do introductions so the broads know? What we were thinking is we can just kind of go one by one and you all can let us know a little smidgy of background, why you initially contacted us when we put out the question saying that we want to have an anti-racism episode. Sound good?
Okay, I'll start. My name is Shamiso. I am part of the Chatty Broad Squad. So longtime listener. This is my second time on a podcast. And what motivated me to reach out to you guys about this anti-racism episode is because I've never really shared my own personal experience. And I think that it's going to be powerful for myself and my community to hear kind of what I've gone through. And also just to have an open discussion about anti-racism and just the difference within different communities. So I'm from also Toronto, Canada. So so just hearing about the wake of George Floyd and what it means to be an ally, I've just really been challenged over these last few months really to work on myself and to really learn what it takes to be an ally in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement and just being an ally within my own community. So I'm very excited for this discussion because I just love to talk to other people about these stuff, and why not with the Chatty Broads?
Cool.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Misa.
I'm Catherine. I am a junior in college, so it's a bit rough right now. I'm taking the LSATs on Saturday, so I'm just kind of like breaking a little bit. Yeah. So anyways, I decided to email you guys about this topic just because I think that Black women, which is what I wanted to talk about mostly, are very misunderstood community. And I think that the world really needs to learn more about them and all the amazing things that they've done. And so I just wanted to help educate on that subject because I have a lot of books that I am going to recommend.
Yes.
My capstone is on the intellectual history of Black women, so that's why I'm a bit like intense about this subject right now. Yeah.
Awesome.
Eleanor?
Okay, yeah. Hi, I'm Eleanor, also known as Ellie. My friends and family call me that. I just graduated in June from the University of Washington, where I studied law, societies, and justice. And in that major, we had many discussions about race and anti-racism and what it means to be an ally. So I absolutely love having these types of discussions with people, and have missed, since graduating, have missed the opportunity to discuss these things on a regular basis. And so that is a big reason as to why I emailed y'all. And then I was adopted transracially as an infant. And so I feel like that sort of little niche has given me a unique perspective on the events that have been going on for a long time, but that have been highlighted this year especially.
Thank you. Andrea?
Hi, my name is Andrea. I'm 28. I'm from El Paso, Texas. I'm gonna graduate this December. My major is not political per se, it's mainly science. But I think ever since Donald Trump started his campaign, racism has been a part of this history ever since this country was founded. But I think that the Donald Trump running and now being president exploded, and it made us see how racism is still here and how it's a big issue. I'm Mexican American. My family has been here since Texas was part of Mexico, yet I still hear people say, go back to where you came from. I'm like, my people have been here before you have been here, and Native Americans have been here since before you were here. So what are you talking about? I email you because I think each and every one of us has a story to tell, and it's important to learn from others' experiences so we can maybe help this crisis that we currently have here in the country, because that's what we're having. We're having a crisis, and their emotions are up to here because election day is coming and all the protests and everything. It's just, I think it's my time. It's time for me to do my part to help educate and try to stop what's going on in this country.
Thank you so much.
All right, we have a broad couple. We have Anthony and Monica.
We're a bruple.
Hi, I'm Monica. I have been listening to y'all for a long time, and my husband here is Anthony. He is a social justice educator, and if you're not watching the YouTube, I am a white woman.
What? This is news to me, y'all. This is breaking.
But Anthony's really good at what he does. I've seen him in action. And since before we were together, social justice issues were important to me. But he really has made me even better about these things and helped me challenge some of my assumptions and see how, I've always been like a card-carrying feminist, but to see how white supremacy and misogyny are just, really linked and how we have to have an intersectional approach to these things. But he can tell you a lot more about his experience.
I mean, I can tell more about my experience, but no, I appreciate that, yes, it is so important. And I'm so amazed to hear so many incredible women talk about the experience of being, a woman in this nation is powerful. But to think about the fact that we're able to talk about it in an intersectional way for the first time and be damn proud of it is really exciting for me as someone who's been, talking about sexual violence and microaggressions and privilege to predominantly white folks for a long time. I'm like, damn, y'all want to talk about it now? Let's do it. I mean, that's exciting for me because these are conversations that I'm sure all of us, especially those of us who are Black or brown, we know what it's like to be Black or brown, but we only know it from our own perspective. And it's so powerful to hear it from other people's perspective and to see where we link up and where we are different and how wonderful that is. And to have white allies in this fight is imperative because, as we all know, we're all, what is racism? Honey, it's what we're all living through. That's our nation was founded on it. And so it's to be anti-racist is to and it's going to sound scary, but to upend the system. And that doesn't mean take to the streets and burn it to the ground, but it means take to the streets and say, y'all, we here, we Black, we queer, we have disabilities, we are trans, we are whomever, and we all make up this beautiful country. And if we all can't be a part of the conversation together, then we're going to keep having these George Floyd moments. And when they are linked up with a global pandemic, some folks better be scared because that means we ain't got jobs and we got something to say. Ooh, we ain't going to stop saying it. And so that's the moment we're living through. And I'm so excited that y'all are having this conversation because we need folks with a platform to lift it up and to say, it's not going to go away. And so we better engage with it.
Yeah. Anthony, would you mind actually starting and taking it away when we're talking about what is racism? And everyone else can definitely jump in on this, but it's something that you see over and over again, just talked about in general, like, oh, racism is out there. And I think for a lot of people, it's like, okay, where? You wouldn't believe the amount of like comments or DMs that I get where people are like, I'm a nurse and I've never seen anyone be racist to like a patient, or I'm a cop and I've never seen, and blah, blah, blah. I've never seen this. What are you talking about? We've had, the civil rights movement was 50 years ago.
Absolutely. My Black mom and my white dad were able to get married. Done. Bingo, bango, bongo. I exist. Racism's gone, baby. No. And that's always what it boils down to is, when I'm doing a program and talking about anti-racism, we have to start with a definition. And that's where it gets scary is racism to me is this. Racism, this is the formula. Racism equals race prejudice plus systemic power. And that's where it gets scary for some people. You give an example of a nurse. Sure, I bet that nurse has probably never heard a doctor walk in and go, Negro, no, I'm not putting a needle near you. And so that nurse has never seen race bias, that they have not seen that race prejudice. I should not use the word bias because that's getting into brain stuff. But that they probably haven't seen explicit race prejudice, but they probably have seen less Black people in their hospital who are getting certain procedures done. Look at COVID-19. You use this example of nurses. Why is it that disproportionately Black and brown bodies are dying at higher rates? Is because we can look at economics, we can look at the malpractice of our healthcare system, the fear tactics that a lot of that has been bred into healthcare, especially for Black and brown bodies, that it's a huge hurdle for them to get over. And so that's that, when we look at racism, we have to understand that it is both the prejudice and the power. And so that's where you get into microaggressions and the implicit biases and the stuff that it can slip by. And for those of us who are Black and brown on the air or are a strong ally, we see it because you've been exposed to it. And once your eyes are open to it, it's really frightening. And that's always the hardest thing, when I'm talking to audiences is once you come around to seeing it, it's really hard to unsee it. Mm-hmm. And I apologize, but honey, that's been my life. Mm-hmm. And I see some people nodding because we know that's the case.
Mm. All right, broads, we have to take a quick pause before we do and get into some of these ads from our wonderful sponsors. The money from these advertisements is going to all be donated to
some anti-racism organizations, and we want to hear from you.
Exactly. We want all you other Broad Squad members to get involved. We will put on our Instagram in the next day different organizations and nonprofits that you would recommend to us.
Yeah.
So yeah, let us know. But let's chat. Do you ever feel like, Bekah, your to-do list is never ending?
Yes, every day.
Yes, between work life, home life, and keeping yourself, your family, and your kids healthy, it's all too normal to have the days go past at lightning speed, which is why I'm always looking for ways to make daily life even slightly easier. One surefire way is skipping those lines at the grocery store or big box retailers and having all of my home pantry and beauty products delivered right to my door with Thrive Market.
I love Thrive Market. I like how we try to do like a sing-songy situation.
I
like
know,
our
I know.
Other
we should go like,
advertiser.
Thrive Market. Thrive Market.
That sounds like some weird like alarm, like. Well,
no, I'm scared and I love Thrive.
Okay, no, I love Thrive too. It's an online membership-based market on a mission to make healthy living easy and affordable for everyone. Thrive Market has every single thing you could possibly need around your house, from organic groceries and clean beauty products to pet food and safe supplements, and it's like having the selection of all your favorite healthy living markets, plus huge discounts, all conveniently available from the comfort of your couch.
And speaking of comfort, fall and winter are hands down my favorite seasons because it's all comfort food all day, baby. I literally dedicated an entire Thrive Market grocery haul just to fall comfort food ingredients, seasonal broths, plant-based proteins to turn into hearty soups. And oh my gosh, they have the most amazing selection of baking mixes that I have all stocked up for those Friday nights because by the fire, baked brownies, nothing beats it. Which, listen, you're going to save so much money on every single item like I did. On average, Thrive members save $32 per order, which when you break that down, all my grocery hauls, $32 an order, that's huge. Every time I check out with Thrive Market, I'm shocked by how much I save, truly.
You can go save too. Go to thrivemarket.com/chatty. Join today and you'll get a free gift of your choosing up to $24 in value. And these gifts are actually really good. I've gotten free gifts from Thrive before.
Yes.
And they're always stuff I actually want. So
yes.
Love that. Anyway, that's THRIVE market.com/chatty to start your risk-free membership. And you'll get a free gift today at thrivemarket.com/chatty.
So broads, if you got a special someone on your holiday shopping list this year, there's a good chance you're freaking out trying to decide the perfect gift. Maybe it's a partner, a parent, or a gift for yourself. One gift that is always a crowd pleaser is fine jewelry from MEJURI.
And before you start freaking out about the term fine jewelry, now consider this. Fine jewelry doesn't have to cost a fortune, especially with MEJURI. They make fine jewelry for every day that is handcrafted, ethically sourced, and it's made to last because MEJURI sells directly to their customers and they cut out the middleman. So you won't see any of the traditional markups of fine jewelry.
I think I've recommended MEJURI jewelry to almost all of my friends.
I have too.
Yeah, everyone. I'm always like...
I've had friends who are like, oh, I can only wear gold earrings. And I'm like, MEJURI. Use my code.
Let me tell you about MEJURI. I've been wearing their pieces for a little over a year now, and let me just tell you, the quality is unmatched. I have a set of gold rings. I'm wearing them right now. I wear them almost every day. Yes, even to wash dishes, shower, and seriously, not a green finger in sight. They still are just such good quality after many, many washes. It all comes back to the quality of their materials. 14 karat gold, sterling silver, and even real diamonds complement sleek designs that look equal parts timeless and trendy. You just have to pull up their website, broads. You're going to lose it over their amazing pieces. There's so many cute, sexy pieces.
And MEJURI believes that fine jewelry is for everyone and every day. Their pieces are perfect whether you're working from home, you're out on the town, or you're looking to give the perfect gift. You can visit MEJURI.com/chatty for 10% off your order. That's spelled, I mean, we're saying it very fancy. It's spelled MEJURI.com/chatty. You'll get 10% off your first order.
Yeah, and from like my learning and understanding of racism growing up, there was two forms that were described to me from my mother. So it was like the overt racism, so the derogatory language, the behavior that was harmful to groups like minority groups. And that's what kind of like my mom showed me growing up, is just like, if someone says this or someone does this, that's racist. But what I learned growing up was that there's very many like covert racist forms. So those were more subtle, and those were kind of embedded in society in ways that still show direct like discrimination and prejudice, but it forms into microaggressions. And I definitely experienced more covert racism that I had to challenge and trying to understand what that was, and really being like, was that racist? Like, oh, I don't know. Oh, they're my friend. Was that racist? So learning the different forms of racism and how other people could be racist towards you, or the things that you might say that you might not assume is racist right off the bat because you're not outwards with it, has been a learning process. And also just unlearning all the things that you could have seen growing up or been a part of growing up, and just wanting to say like, okay, that was racist, that I participated in that, or I said that as well. And yeah, I think that the different forms of it showing up continues to be in like everyday life as well, through social media, and just when you have people in power saying things and it's being challenged as well. And it's like, no, it is racist, but it's showing up in different forms.
So you're also are you touching on also how maybe you can hold beliefs about yourself because of maybe what society or culture has taught about who you are because of your race? Was that also sort of what you were saying? Because I find that really interesting.
Yeah, like in terms of it being more like covert racism and like microaggressions of it, saying like, you're really pretty for a Black girl. So I'd be like, oh, okay, thank you. Like, I'd be like, I don't really know how to take that. But then realizing later that they were pertaining my beauty only to a certain point because of the color of my skin. And it's really, it gets sometimes still challenging to decipher when people are like saying things, because it's kind of thrown in as like a compliment or a joke or an exemption. And I'm just like, oh, but all of those are still not okay. I don't know if that makes sense.
I love that idea. You bring up, Bekah, that idea of the internalized racism in terms of, there's so many marginalized communities that have been trained to internalize that crap, that women are taught to internalize that idea of what it is to be a proper woman, as a male identified person, that I have to have a certain set of muscles if I want to be seen as masked, and as a Black queer man who's, yes, I'm married to a white woman, which I just found out she's white. But, I internalize so many different things, and we can talk about all of the different identities that we hold and how those identities, we were trained what it is to be a Black person, what it is to be a man, what it is to be an American citizen.
And how you fit on that power pyramid,
Absolutely.
Right? And how much power you can claim is sort of feels writ into
Absolutely.
into the world already.
Yeah, and in terms of race, there's that colorism. You're sort of talking. You're beautiful for this. Your hair is great. Can I touch? That there's all of that stuff. I think about, you talk about personal experience. I didn't find myself beautiful until 25. that I would find reasons to, you know, especially as a person who is of a Black and a white parent, that I was never Black enough, I was never white enough. And even within, you know, mixed race culture, I wanted this feature or that feature. And I was trained, because we all grew up with the same stories and movies and TV shows of what is attractive, that I was trained to go, oh, I don't look like any of those folks, but I can aspire to be like this or that. And the few Black heroes or the few Black images that were out there, if I look like that person, damn. You know, then it's even harder. When you talk about what is racism, we're all, you know, the hard truth is we are all racist. We are, and I apologize to say that, because we all have contributed to a culture that is fundamentally built on white supremacy. And I know that that's scary and so hard. And people can't even take on privilege, let alone white supremacy. And they're like, but I don't have no tiki torches in my garage. You don't need them, honey. You don't need them, honey. We spend our money, we spend our time, and we put our efforts towards things that are inherently racist. And what is anti-racist is what we're doing right now, which is to shed a light on it, to expose it in order to eventually inoculate it. But, you know, we have to sometimes say the scary truths in order to face it. That, you know, that I have to admit that I didn't find myself beautiful till 25, to now look back at it. And I know y'all are like, that's the voice of a man who could barely be over 25. And I'm a couple of years just over it. But I'm on the other side of it going, damn, that was wasted time. That was wasted time.
I'd like to add on to some of that, both of what everyone has said so far. So in terms of, I remember Anthony mentioned, you know, internalized racism within the healthcare system. And it reminded me of something that one of my friends shared. It was on Twitter, it was a picture from a page of one of the Pearson nursing textbooks that was published in 2017. And it was on how to treat patients of different races, and white people were not listed. It was Native American, Latinx community, Asians, and it gave like a list under each group of what type of patient they are. So for example, Black people, it said Black people might be aggressive and say they're in pain when they're not really in pain. That was 2017.
You can actually find this. This is on my highlights. You can go and see the picture of it. It's on my highlight on my page. If anyone is doubting this, it's definitely a very real thing. Sorry, please continue. If anyone wants to go look at it, it's a thing.
Yeah, and just look it up. Pearson, they removed the page, but you know, professors, they say if you want to get a cheaper book, get the 2017 version. So like people are still reading it. Also, to go off of, you know, that internalized racism, I'm biracial, so I wouldn't consider myself white, even though I have white skin, because I've experienced things and I've been told different things my entire life, but I'm not Black because of my skin. But I remember going through auditions and stuff for school musicals and plays, and I was like, I want to audition for this lead that is white. And I knew that people in the past hadn't gotten roles, but they were great for it because they weren't white. So I knew that because I am on that line where I can be seen as white or Black, I would always straighten my hair for auditions because I felt that the directors would see me as worthier for roles, which now that I think about it, that I've been thinking about it this past year, I just find it sad that I couldn't walk into an audition for Wendy with curly hair. So, yeah.
I think you're touching, though, on like a more lighter note of what is maybe survival tactics for people, because, and maybe we can discuss this a little bit if anyone wants to jump in, but how if you're closer in proximity to whiteness, either by your appearance or your partner or whatever, that could make you literally physically safer or give you more privilege, like you're saying, access to like a role in a play or much more, serious things?
Yeah, I definitely know I have privilege, which is something that I think about a lot. So there's another example. Depending on where I'm at, people can tell. They were like, are you Black? And I'm like, yeah. Throughout my life, I've had different times where I've been treated fine, but I've also been around white people who think it's okay to say the N-word in front of me because they don't know I'm biracial, or maybe they do, but they don't care. Or I've had friends when I was little who my mom told me that their parents didn't want them to play with me because I was the biracial bastard in Christian school. So, like, I understand my privilege, but I'm also scared at times. Like, I'm scared to go down south. I'm scared to go into Pennsylvania. Like, it's just different, I guess, wherever you're at.
I can speak a little bit to that as well. I am not a biracial person. I am sort of undeniably Black. Like, when people look at me, they see a Black girl. But as someone who was transracially adopted and grew up with white parents, I too feel that I grew up with some type of privilege in the way that I present myself. I was raised to sort of appeal to a white crowd. And so kind of as Catherine said, like, I have had friends and my family members who say the N-word around me and don't understand like how or why that might be offensive because I am somehow seen as separate. They're like, oh, you're not Black, you're our family member.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to Ellie on that matter as well, in terms of just being like a minority around predominantly white culture. I grew up in a small town, like an hour and a half outside of Toronto. And for the majority of my life, I was one of the only Black kids that went to that school. And so in high school, especially, it was really a survival mode. Like, it was a time when I just had to know that after this, I was going to be in an environment with more cultural backgrounds. And so when kids would sing a song that had the N-word in it, and they would turn to me, and it was like, all I wanted to do in that moment was cry, because the word hits hard. Like, it will always hit hard. And everyone's looking at me, and I'm just like, oh no, it's cool. Like, it's okay. It's cool. It's cool. You're my friend. It's cool. But I would cry. Like, I would go home and I would cry about that, because when you're thinking about like the friendships that you have at the time, it was like, am I willing to lose this friend? I just valued having that connection with people as opposed to even just standing up for myself. And so being in a small town where race is not really discussed, or race was something that people would say like, oh, like, our town's not racist. It's like, no, it's not racist to you, because you get to live and not have the experiences of people following you around in the store, of like having to fear that your younger brother is going to get pulled over by the cops or anything like that. So I would have to battle, when was I going to say something versus when am I willing to lose this friendship over? So yeah, survival was key, and still learning how to overcome that,
Yeah, that made me think of something. I'm sorry, you go ahead, Andrea.
No, you go ahead. It's okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Arkansas, which, it was not a very diverse place, but I lived in a pretty liberal place, and I didn't see a lot of overt racism. I moved to Chicago for school, and I'd lived there for 10 years. And I'd tell people I was from Arkansas, and they'd say, oh, it's kind of racist there, right? It's like racist in the South. It's bad there, racism. And that was really interesting to me, because
living in one of the most segregated cities in this nation, Chicago, and it's just like, what?
Yeah, and I think that is what we're seeing with this George Floyd reckoning is that people are realizing that it's not just something that I can say, oh, it's over there in someone else's community. It's something I don't have to actively engage with. No, it is everywhere. It is in every community in America.
And as we're hearing, it is so vastly different. And what is so sad is I'm sitting here going, oh, it's so beautiful how different all of our forms of racism are. Because we have, going back to, because we've all been trained that we have to deal with it, that it's baked into the system and that we just have to deal with it, versus this moment that we're living through of saying, no, why should we have to live with it? There is a better opportunity. And Andrea was starting to speak, and I don't want to speak to what you were going to talk about, but I think El Paso is a fascinating place, having been there, that it's this almost porous, city in which there are some folks who live and, work and go back and forth. And yet it is so interesting, the type of racism that exists there that is different, because of this space that is sort of white and brown. And I think there is a good small percentage of Black folks there as well. But I would love to hear your experience just as a person who's gone there and worked there. What's the experience of living there and having that experience?
Well, for people that don't know, El Paso, it's border with Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. So we're sister cities, right? We're 20 minutes away from one another. We have the international bridges, but we're sister cities, right? And growing up in a Hispanic community, you're always, and I remember this from my grandparents, my grandmother, saying the whiter you are, the prettier you are. And we have been brainwashed that white equals beauty. And it's not. Beauty comes in all different colors. And it comes like our hair doesn't have to be curly or doesn't have to be straight in order for us to be beautiful. And you see that a lot in like Hispanic communities, that the whiter you are, it's like a social status, and I'm air quoting because it's like, oh, I have more privilege than you are. It's like, what are you talking about? We're still a minority, and it's like we're fighting each other instead of like helping each other. Because over here, we do have a lot of people that come from Juarez. They come work here to El Paso, and then they go back to Juarez because they live there, because for whatever reasons they want. Again, it's a 20-minute car ride from probably their house to their job. And yet we're still discriminating to those who come here and work and pay taxes, and like, oh, but you're Mexican. I pay the same taxes you do. I do the same amount of labor you do. And you know what? I'm getting paid less because we're Hispanic. El Paso, I think I'm lucky enough to live in a community that is mostly Hispanics. I have experienced racism, not here in my city, but I have experienced it in other cities. And you see it when, like Anthony mentioned, we do have African Americans here, but it's such a small population because mainly they're soldiers for Fort Bliss. And I don't want to say you, but I say we, because I believe that we're part of the problem. We say, oh, don't go to that part of the town because that's the Black part of town. It's like, what are you talking about? Those are soldiers. Like, it's unbelievable. But I mean, racism, it's a multidimensional problem, right? Because each and every one of us has experienced racism in a very, very different way. There's not a... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you hit on it so hard in terms of looking at what is white supremacy. It says that there is whiteness in the center, and all of us are trying to get closer to it, to get closer to that sense of power, and we will do anything. And so that means creating racial divides. I grew up in a sort of I'm just going to say I grew up poor. And I only say that because my mom would be like, how dare you? I gave you everything. And she did. And she's wonderful. And honey, I love you, mama.
Hello, Michelle.
But because she's going to listen, she's going to shout out. But that there was those racial divides are real, that it's like, at least you aren't this. We're better than that. And it's like when you are given scraps, you fend for yourself and you will push everybody out of your way in order to say, no, I deserve that scrap. And that's where it sucks and I get it, and the hard truth is explaining, all of the stuff that we're talking about. We keep dropping the P word, privilege, and that's really scary for some white people. And I get it, because you may have grown up poor as dirt. You may have grown up with lack of education and all of those things and realized, you know what, I may be white, but I'm not seeing the benefits of it. And I get that, it's the understanding of privilege is diverse. But that for me, I always, when I'm explaining what is privilege, I go, we have to stop and think first, release your booty hole. Cause it just got real tight when you heard that word. If you're white, that. But it's that understanding that your story has been told far more than anybody else's. The history books tell your story first and foremost. And that in the race towards money and the race towards things, you are at the front of that line. And that we all on this line have different privileges. All of us on this, that I can see right now, we are all, traditionally attractive people. And higher than that, all of us are quote unquote, traditionally attractive people. And so that is certain doors are open for us. I can't tell, but it doesn't look like anybody has a physical disability. That is a privilege that we all hold. Now, we may have invisible disabilities. We may have other things that are not, that I can't visibly see, but they are different challenges, but we have to admit that some of us are a little bit further in line when it comes to this stuff. And that my experience, I also am a dude. I have a vastly different experience than all of you on this line. As someone who's been talking about fighting sexual violence for the last 10 years, I know that I have a vastly different experience than all of you walking alone at night. And that is a privilege that I hold. Now, I am also a queer man, and I've had, compared to my heterosexual male colleagues, I have a different set of experiences being a queer identified dude that are different than my heterosexual white cisgender dudes. And so it's like, we have to look at it from the different perspectives of all of us on the line. And I think we've all heard it thus far in the conversation. And it's sad, but I fucking love it. Excuse my language. No,
yeah. And I also think it's not only white people, like you said, that get a little uptight when you hear the word privilege. Like, I have family members who are 100% Hispanic and they're not like as white passing as I am, who still have like achieved financial success. And they'll be the first one to step in and bring up that whole rhetoric of like, well, you need to bring yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, I did it, so why can't everyone else do it? Ignoring the fact that they have privilege, that they don't have as thick of an accent as someone else for some other reason. So then that gives them, that gets them even closer, like you said, to this center. Or, for whatever reason, they went to a better school just because they were in a better district for, it may have just been chance, it may have been luck, but that's still a part of their privilege that took them to the place they are now. And it's just interesting because there are 100% layers of privilege, like we've been talking about, with colorism, with wealth, all these other things. And people who aren't like 100% white or white passing still, like we've been talking about, have to really examine what kind of bias we have and how we're not acknowledging the privilege that we hold in whatever unique way that we do.
Mm-hmm. The thing is that racism is expressed in different ways, and not everybody seems to understand what it is because there's no set definition of it. And you can see it in the media. People don't want to be racist, but they are, and they're not intended to offend people, but they do. And you can see it on the media, how many companies have pulled out their advertisements because they were being racist. How many companies have pulled out clothing because they were racist. I mean, the most recent one that I remember was the H&M one, that it was African American boy, and he had a sweatshirt and it said monkey, and there was like a white boy, and it said it was another animal, and it's like your intention wasn't to be racist, but you were. There's no set definition. Like when they pulled the Aunt Jemima pancakes out of the market. People don't know this, but Aunt Jemima, when it first started, it was to make fun of Black mammies. And people don't want to be racist, but they are. And it's creating a problem, a multi-dimensional problem, because there's no said, this is racism and it is what it is. No, it has different faces, it has different aggressions, it has different forms, and we all have experienced it differently.
I love that you bring this up in terms of like, I am a huge antique person, and I'm holding up, if you're on YouTube, honey, you are enjoying every second of it. Oh, it's a Black man. No, you get closer. He is a monkey with a tail, and he is just a candlestick.
A monkey butler,
He's a monkey butler.
Harmless.
He is one of many monkey butler things that I have collected over the years, because our nation loves this imagery. And I know it is so hard for us to see it, but I have to buy it. I go to antique shops and people, it's funny. You were like, no one wants to be seen as racist. We bought this one recently. And I said, it's racist. I have to buy it. And the girl was like, oh my God, tell me, where did you find it? And I was like, don't worry, it's coming to my home. No white person, except apparently my dang white wife. Why didn't anybody tell me about this? That like, it is okay because I am going to house it and then I will throw it away one day or be buried with it all just so that no one else has to see it. But our nation has this crap. And then it's
I feel like you immediately get defensive. White people so immediately get defensive about these things and about microaggressions too, right? It's you start to learn about these things and then you do like a this is my life like replay in your head of every single moment that you ever said something that might have been a microaggression, and you like beat up on yourself and try to atone for it. And it's just like, no, it's in the past. You know better now. Like, let's move into the future, because that's not productive. It's good to examine these things, but we also can't like flagellate ourselves too much.
How do you meet your intentions with your impact? And when you make a mistake, do you apologize and move forward? All of us Black folks, I'm not going to speak for all Black folks, but I'm not asking every white person to go through their past and give me a detailed receipt of every dang, aggression that they've made. I just ask that they move forward and be better than they were today. Because we all are achieving that. We're all, as human beings, trying to be better than we are right now in this moment. And all of us, that's where equity, where it comes to equity means we all get to the same starting line and try to keep doing better than we are right now. It's just some of us have additional challenges. And so when we get to that place where those challenges are not just baked into the system, then we are truly equal, but we aren't there yet.
All right, broads, we have to take a quick pause again. Listen, I can't be the only person that for everything in life wants to have their cake and eat it too, right? You want to be able to drink the bottle of wine and not have the headache the next day. Want to be able to stay up and watch movies with my husband and then be fully rested the next morning. And I want to have a collection of bras that feel sexy but are also comfortable. Okay, that's what I want. First two, I haven't found a complete solution for, unfortunately, but now with the help of THIRDLOVE, I own bras that are super sexy and super comfortable.
And Jess and I are obsessed with this company for so many reasons, and this is why I've recommended them to friends before. For starters, they carry more than 80 sizes, 80, with cups ranging from AA to I, including half cups and band sized 30 to 48. Thank goodness, finally, inclusive bra sizing, not the 12 size options from traditional retailers. And to get you in the best bra, you'll start off by taking THIRDLOVE's Fit Finder quiz to find your perfect fit in less than 60 seconds. It's actually incredibly insightful. I had no idea that breast shape matters as much as size when you're finding a good fit.
Truly, you learn something new every day, and THIRDLOVE's helped me with that. And back to my favorite part, these bras are so comfortable, which is thanks to THIRDLOVE's focus on quality from start to finish. no slip straps, a scratch-free band, and memory foam cups are all just some of the details that THIRDLOVE focuses on to keep you comfy. Also, THIRDLOVE donates all their gently used return bras to those in need, supporting charities in their local San Francisco Bay Area and across the United States. So far, THIRDLOVE has donated over $20 million in bras.
I love that.
Amazing.
And THIRDLOVE knows there's a perfect bra for everyone. So right now, they're offering our listeners 10% off your first order. Go to thirdlove.com/chatty now, and you'll find your perfect fitting bra, and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. That's thirdlove.com/chatty for 10% off today.
So, broads, we've all been spending more time indoors this year, obviously, and as the days grow shorter, our time outdoors does as well, which means it's more important than ever to make sure you're staying healthy and breathing the best, cleanest air you can, because broads, I read recently that indoor air can be up to 5 times worse than outdoor air, according to the EPA.
Oh my God.
5 times. And in Los Angeles, the outdoor air quality is already less than ideal. So 5 times worse than that? Not exactly what I want my family breathing when we're inside. So in our home, we use MOLEKULE air purification systems to take care of that.
Not to mention, we live in a part of the country where there's a lot of smoke in the air during certain times of year, aka right now. So
Smoke.
Out of any air purifier on the market, MOLEKULE destroys the widest range of pollutants, including viruses, bacteria, mold, allergens, and chemicals in the air. I've always had some sort of air purifier in my house, even growing up, but apparently, what was the point of that? Because traditional air purifiers collect pollutants on filters where they can then be multiplied and released back into the air. But with MOLEKULE's breakthrough technology, pollutants are not only collected, but they're destroyed.
Absolutely destroyed. We are more than a little obsessed with our MOLEKULE systems. They are so sleek and beautifully designed.
They're some of the most gorgeous on the market.
They're chic.
For sure.
They're sexy air purifiers. We have them in multiple rooms, and they honestly look like a Scandinavian art piece, not like the clunky towers of yesteryear you might be picturing. We have the MOLEKULE air for our bigger living spaces and the MOLEKULE minis in the bedrooms. And as someone who suffers big time from allergies, I can honestly say my sleep quality's improved drastically since we set one up in the bedroom. Oh my goodness.
Oh, so did ours. We stopped waking up with like headaches and like sore throat situations.
I used to take these acrylic nails and just scratch my face, and now it's like, ooh, no more.
Thank goodness. That sounds scary.
Yeah, very scary.
For 10% off your first air purifier order, visit molekule.com and enter code chatty at checkout. Again, if you want 10% off your first air purifier order, you gotta visit MOLEKULE, molecule with a K.com, and enter code chatty at checkout. Molekule.com.
I have a question. When, especially right now, and I know a lot of broads listening are white. And I think the thing that was coming up very often was the whole, like, I don't see color, so I have a pass type thing. Like, I'm not, overtly this way, I don't see color. Can you maybe explain how, first of all, that's not the right approach, and second, maybe how that's affected you negatively, that perspective?
I'll go. Yeah, it just irritates me every time. So I'm not gonna dog my family because my mom told me not to. Plus, I don't want to air all of our business. But so my mom's family white. My dad's family black, but I mostly see my mom's family, and every time I see them, especially recently, every time I get in the car with them or walk into the room, they always start out by talking about how they're not racist, or how they're like, Catherine, I don't see color. Mm-hmm. I just see us all as the same, but then they'll say something about like a black person, like they'll turn I don't see color into, Antoine Rose was a thug. Mm. So if anybody knows who Antoine Rose is, he was shot in Pittsburgh and killed, 17 years old. And so I was like, how do you go from I don't see color to Antoine Rose was a thug and he got shot because the police were scared of him, And then like it also leads to the fact that like you tell me you don't see color, but then the next day you tell me that I'm acting a certain way and that's the black in me coming out. Like you're acting feisty, that's the black in you. Like it doesn't.
Or even if they don't see color, why are they bringing this up to you in particular in the first place? Why aren't they having the same conversation with the white people around them? Why do they have to make it a point to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that the struggles with when people would tell me like they don't see colors, that the message that they were telling me, or the message that was being conveyed, is that they're denying the significance of like my racial identity. And it's almost like telling me that I have to like assimilate into just what, like as if it was one culture. And it was just so problematic to me because I knew my background. So I'm half Jamaican and half Zimbabwean. And so when people tell me that they don't see color, I was like, so what am I then to you, or what am I then to society? Because I am different. We're all different. And so to say you're not seeing colors, I'm just being blended in. Like, no, I'm my own unique individual. So I do not want to be put into a box. I do not want to be blended into anything. And yeah, it's just really about denying like my racial identity and my cultural being and identity.
And your experience, so they don't have to take responsibility for it, right? Like if somebody says, oh, I don't see gender, and it's like, well, other people do. So I feel like I'm more in danger at night because other people, men, notice that I'm a woman. So that doesn't really help if you don't see it, because I'm still having experiences that make me unsafe or make me feel unsafe, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it's such a cop-out from actually reckoning with the reality of the world for so many people. To say that I don't see color is just saying that I live in a bubble where I cannot see color, right? Like you cannot acknowledge racism when you haven't experienced it. And the more that we can empathize with other people's experiences and learn from them, and not in a way that's like, oh, I'm a bad person because I didn't know this before, right? I think that's why people get so scared about really examining this in their own life, is because nobody wants to be a bad person, right? Anthony does this thing in some of his talks where he's like, let's all say it together. I am a good person, right? We all have that ability. And because you acknowledge racism, it doesn't mean that you were a bad person before, you know?
That phrase, I don't see race, is also, you know, I also hear that. I don't care if you were black, red, yellow, green. And I'm always like, if any of us saw a green person right now, I would pray that either we get some, you know, Ghostbusters, we get some health professionals, or we get the MIB up in here, because there is a problem, right? That you know, when we ignore those issues, it's as everybody is saying, that it's this assimilationist idea, and that it ignores that what we are trying to say is that right now is not where we want to be. Tomorrow is where we are trying to get. And that if we don't acknowledge where we are today, we can't get there, because then we don't see the floor that we are all standing on. And that's all we're saying. You know, the attack on the 1619 Project and the attack on the idea, you know, for me right now, I'm living through a moment where I do diversity, equity, and inclusion. Hello, honey, I'm usually good at it. Education. And an executive order now exists saying that what I do is anti-American. And what I do is the most American work that exists. It simply says that we are all different, and that we get to fight it out. We all have different ideas, and the best idea deserves to be looked at and examined. But if we don't see each other for who we are, we don't get to the ideas. And where we exist right now is a place in which we don't see each other, in which we are just seeing ideas of one another. Bekah, as you pointed out, that idea of gender, you know, I've spent the last 10 years, a lot of it talking to military folks about fighting gender inequity and fighting sexual violence. And when I have those audiences that go, oh, I get it. Oh, I see it. It is very different. And I'm like, that's all I'm trying to get you to see. I'm not saying you're an asshole, terrible person. I'm just saying, look, we live in a society that sees things very differently. That women who have sex are often seen as sluts and hoes, or ratchet, or puta, or all of these racialized, messed up images. And men who have sex are seen as a pimp, a playa, a stud, maybe a fuck boy. Ooh, that's the worst of it. Yikes. and yet it's just the balancing act ain't equal. Mm-hmm. And the implications of such are not equal. And trans and gender nonconforming and gender fluid folks are left out of the conversation. And, and so we're just trying to get to a place of, if we can't see what's in front of us right now, we can't get to, as I like to say, tomorrow, which is where we're all trying to get to.
Mm-hmm. I think too, to speak to what Anthony was saying about getting to that place of tomorrow and like taking it sort of back to this idea of colorblindness, to express those ideas to children who are sort of maybe just experiencing racism or figuring out their racial identity, if they're biracial or whatever, you are denying that child the opportunity to fully experience whatever, to fully grow into that and not validating whatever experiences they might be feeling. And so in doing that, we are sort of negating any work that we are putting in to create this better tomorrow that we've been talking about. And so that's what's really scary to me is what the young people, what the children, the people who are just coming into their racial identities of today are seeing and hearing, because they're the ones who are going to be living in this tomorrow that we're talking about.
Ellie, would you mind talking a little bit about your experience coming into your identity as a Black woman since you grew up, you were a transracial adoptee, and kind of what that looked like? Did your parents acknowledge, when we're talking about colorblindness, was this something that your family and your community acknowledged was like your difference? Like, can you talk about that experience?
Absolutely. So it's so funny because when as a little kid, very little, like I'd say 5 to 9, I like when we're talking about truly like not seeing race, like I would dress up as Laura Ingalls Wilder or Anne of Green Gables and truly believe that I embodied these women and not fully. I called white people pink. I didn't even understand, because white people aren't, white. They're a peach colored. So I didn't really understand this concept of race until I got older. But my parents did a really excellent job. I grew up in Seattle, and the specific zip code that I lived in, 98118, when I was growing up, it was the most diverse in the country. And so my neighbors across the street were transracially adopted. I had mentors and many friends who grew up in situations that were identical to mine. And so I was really lucky in that I was surrounded by people who were in a similar situation to me. So when I was starting to create that racial identity, I didn't feel as ostracized, I guess, as I could have been.
Yeah, the problem with people saying, I don't see color, is saying, I don't see a problem. That problem doesn't affect me. I don't have to fix it. It doesn't exist because I'm not experiencing it. And people that say, I don't see color, is people not accepting the history of this country, of how people came and they got slaughtered, Native Americans, Mexicans, African Americans. I mean, today in 2020, African Americans have been they're slaves. They have been slaves more than they have been free. And it's sad, and you see it. And people that say, I don't see color because those problems already passed, there's no slavery anymore. And you're like, is it really? Because you look at the prisons and it's full of African Americans, it's full of Hispanics, because, the prison system, it's a multi-billion, and let me say that again, billion-dollar industry. And the more people you have incarcerated, the more people that are working with you. And you're like, slavery might not be as what it was, that I have a plantation and you work here for me for free. But it has transformed into, you do something minimal. If something minimal, you get sent to jail for many, many years, and you're still working for free. And it's like, our minorities really free, our African Americans really free, our Hispanics really free. Not seeing color, it's not wanting to see that we have a problem of systematic racism, because Even when you fill up a form, one of the first questions that you ask, what's your race? What's your color? If the government assigns that to us because they need to divide us among us. They need to determine what the problem is and then assign it to certain areas. Oh, the crime is high because the African Americans live here. Oh, there's a drug problem in El Paso because Mexicans live there. It's those things of, I don't see color. You don't want to see the history of this country, because this country, the history, it's not black and white. It has a lot of red in it because it has a lot of blood and it has a lot of tears, and we're still suffering it. I mean, it's 2020 and a white man with a criminal record, it's more likely to get a job if he's competing with a minority, an African American, a Hispanic, an Asian American with no criminal history. That's racism. That's right there. Just go to the prison system. In the vast majority of people incarcerated are people of color. It's like, it's racism really gone? Are we really free as minorities?
Can I just say, this group right here, Andrea, that right there, put that on a bumper sticker. That is the next presidential election right there. Honestly, I mean, this is the reason why Black and brown women are going to get us out of this stagnation that we are in. Because we have to look at, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, that it is that the experience that you have all lived that is all vastly different. Listen to this conversation thus far, and it is vastly different, all of the experiences. There are so many things on our Venn diagram that we may overlap, but you are all able to speak so beautifully to this moment and say, all right, this is, and yet I can guarantee after all of this, y'all are going to go back to doing your best damn lives, because you're just like, yeah, I can look at that. I can examine it harshly and then go, honey, I got plans later on. It's COVID, so they ain't going to be external, but I got plans, you know? And that is what is the powerful moment is, you know, the folks that are so scared of privilege and so scared of these conversations, it's because it trips them up, and it's hard to examine, and it's hard to take a hard look at it and to go, I'm okay. I'm looking at it. I'm examining it. It's really messed up. It is nefarious. It is deeply rooted. Cool. And I have to keep going on with my day. And those folks, they have a really hard time of looking at it and not feeling like, oh, that's everything now. And it's like, no, that's just the way it is. And we have to be better than this. And so I'm just blown away by hearing all of the eloquence on this phone call and the ability for you all to just so easily diagnose the issue so that we can do the hard work of moving forward and being better.
I'd kind of like to hear everyone's personal opinion. Why is this so hard for some people to hear? And why are people making their whole work to dismantle these kind of conversations and, you know, have the bullet points of why this is untrue? And I'd love to hear everyone's opinion on this, because, you know, it's not just white people. And this is the first thing that white people will bring up, you know, like, oh, there are Black people, or there are Hispanic people, or there are whoever who don't agree. You know, here's what's her face? Oh, I can't think of her name. The
Candace Owens.
Yeah. Well, maybe you need to watch Candace Owens' YouTube videos. You know, it's like, where are there people like her and, you know, all the other people who are so invested in making what we're talking about a lie and undermining the truth of it? I would love to hear different opinions on this.
Because they haven't experienced it. That's why they're like, it doesn't exist. They haven't.
I think it's beyond that, though, since there are people that are Black or who are brown who are making it their work to negate it, and I don't know if it's
if they align themselves with that worldview, if they assimilate to that worldview, they're closer to the power, and that's easier for them, I think, than doing the hard work of dismantling the whole system or creating a new system. It's
quicker.
And it's the same reason you see women slut shaming other women. And it's the same thing. It's like, if I have that internalized misogyny and I have that worldview, then it makes me safer to be part of that power. If I can kind of go under the radar, that's my take on it, at least.
You said the magic word, investment. Investment isn't always money. Investment is that exact idea of being closer to power. And it sucks. It's really hard, but it's easy to push down people of other racial or marginalized groups than it is to push down people who hold the power, because they could crush me. I can easily crush other people who have less power than me.
Yeah, and they could also have just years of confirmation bias built up. So like confirmation bias would be like looking for information to confirm your already existing beliefs. So if they've already built up years of having information given to them in a certain way, they're unable to detach their emotional thoughts towards something, and they're so passionately driven one way. So it's about them having to work on unlearning and just listening and hearing other people's experiencing without associating their own thoughts and feelings from what they've learned growing up. And it's hard having those conversations with people who might be so set in those ways to be having those ideas, or saying that something doesn't exist or racism doesn't exist. But it's about the patience and the willingness and the drive to keep going. But of course that bears a huge emotional labor on yourself, because you're now having to, for me personally, I feel like, okay, now I'm just educating and now I'm helping them with this. But to make a change is to keep going, to passionately just push yourself to want to have these conversations with people who might not want to see things your way, or just are so blinded and clouded.
By the way, Andrea, I think what you said is 100% true. I think there's also just other reasons for people. I didn't mean to shut you down with that, but I think that there is other reasons too that are maybe a little bit more nuanced and like Anthony, what you were saying, the piece of grabbing at the scraps, what can I get? How can I get, whatever I can to bring me closer to feeling like I have some power and some privilege, because that makes life easier when I have those things. Yeah.
It has a
thing
cost.
Is that we have been brainwashed into the American culture. We have been taught that, okay, you do certain things because of the color of your skin. And it's like, well, maybe I deserve this, right? I and this is speaking for myself as Mexican American, and this is something that I experienced in my community, in my culture. It's like, we have to prove that we're more American than the white Americans to feel that a sense that we belong. And then we have to prove to Mexicans that we're more Mexicans than them in order to have a sense of belonging. Because sometimes I go to Mexico and they're like, oh, you're not Mexican, you're American. It's like, no, I have the best of both worlds. I have two cultures. And it's part of that brainwashing that your culture is wrong. What you're doing it's wrong. People glorified Cinco de Mayo, but let me ask, does anybody know why we celebrate that? And it's this amazing party and Taco Tuesday and Cinco de Mayo and tequila, but let me ask, why do we celebrate it? Why does it mean? What does it mean? Because it's important in my culture, yeah, but it's not as important as the revolution or the Independence Day in Mexico, right? I mean, we celebrate it, but here it's a big party, and it's the Americans try to take whatever they can of its culture and then make it their own, and then they labeled us as, you're American, but you're Mexican. You're American, but you're African. You're American, but you're Asian. So try to pinpoint who's different by your Mexican American, your Asian American, your African American. And after a certain amount of time that we embraced it and we're like, yeah, I'm Mexican American. I have two cultures. Now it's like, oh, there's a problem because you're embracing it too much when it wasn't supposed to be like that. So people, they're like, oh, racism doesn't exist. It does. You might have been thought to what things that they're doing to you, it's okay. Like earning less because of your last name. Like not being able to see a doctor when you need it because of where you live. Like not being able to have a good education system because of your zip code. And we're thought, and we're throughout life, we're thought to, okay, you need to accustom, and now you need to be part of this American culture, and you need to celebrate this if you want to be American, because it's the motto that it's on right now. I'm a true American. I'm a true patriot. It's like, well, yeah, but the beauty of this country is that it was founded by immigrants. Right? And you see people, oh, you, in America, we speak English. First of all, America is just something that bothers me so much. It's a continent. It's not a country. We're in the United States of America. And America goes from all the way to Canada, all the way to Latin America. It's not, we have we made that word ours. It's like, no, first of all. Second of all, when your people got here, Native Americans have their own language. They were speaking Cherokee, they were speaking Navajo. It's like, I can speak whatever. In Texas, the name changed. It was supposed to be Texas. Like, we speak Spanish. You don't have the right to tell me what I cannot speak here, right? And we have been taught that you need to be true American and your culture, you put it on the side instead of like celebrating what makes us different, because that's the beauty of this country.
There are a lot of stories to be told. And that's what's beautiful, is that we're not asking for white stories to never be told again. We're just saying, can we tell some more stories? There's more of us. And that as you're pointing out, a lot of us gave blood, sweat, and tears to make sure, and are still giving it, and to make sure that all of our stories get to be told. It's just,
but also the freedom to have a different kind of story too, right?
Yes.
I think that you only see stories of marginalized groups that are about the blood, sweat, and tears. And you don't see as many stories about the joy and just like the mundane, like every day, right? White people just get to be like normal and boring in movies, and black and brown people like have to have some terrible thing happening to them.
Totally.
So I think as far as like, as white people go, like we need to be investing in those different kinds of stories too. Like go watch something else, go watch, like you don't have to just like sit down and watch 12 Years a Slave, like go watch Insecure, or, you know, there's so much diverse media that we can be supporting that gives different kinds of stories a voice.
Absolutely. Black Girl Joy. I want to see it all the time, every day, you know? I mean, and that it's normalized. That's all we're asking for, is normalizing those stories. Because we've seen the sad version of our story. Can we see some other versions of it as well?
It's saying like there's nothing wrong with being white. Of course, there's nothing wrong with being white, but there's also nothing wrong with being colorful. Like, look at all of us. We all have different color skins. We all have different backgrounds, and our story matters. And the way we tell it to people, it's like, you know what? This is like, there's more to the story. There's another side to it. And that's the beauty of this country. It was founded by immigrants, and we still need to move forward into making, because the American dream does not pertain to a white person. It pertains to all of us, because all of us, we want a better future for our family. We want to better ourselves. We want a better quality of life.
Well, it's interesting. Oh, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, forget the American dream. Like, I've learned enough that the American dream is just bullshit. Okay. Like, it's just stupid. We push our American dream into Latin America and try to change them into us, you know, or we push it across the Atlantic, trying to push the American dream over there. You just forget the American dream. Like, what even is it? The American dream is just white.
Or it's individualism, you know? It's like, I may make $35,000 a year, but you better believe I'm voting for the candidate that's not going to tax people who make over $400,000, because maybe one day I might make $400,000, okay? And just in case, you know, it's like, there's some quote by someone, I don't fucking know, I don't remember who.
I love that quote, it's my favorite.
But it's like, socialism didn't catch on in America because we were all sold the lie that we're just temporarily embarrassed millionaires, right? And it's kind of like a very similar thing with race, is like, well, you know, one day I can fake it enough till I make it, and I too can be a wealthy white man, you know? I just have to try to get as close as possible as I can to that. And it's interesting how, you know, I keep going back to the thing you said, Anthony, about like grabbing at the scraps, because you see it so interestingly. Even white people will position themselves strategically in the way that benefits them in the moment. So like when we saw in the wake of George Floyd's murder, influencers, since I'm a part of that community, you saw people who never said a single fucking thing about racism, because if they did, they would lose 10,000, 20,000 followers. So they never even mentioned it. All they say is, you know, vote, like Taylor Swift, like just cute, vote. I'm not going to say who to vote for. Just like do your thing and vote, because that's like the most non-committal thing you could possibly fucking say. And then after George Floyd was murdered, you had people coming in the comments section saying, why aren't you saying anything? So then you have these white women going like, oh my God, okay, what's going to happen? Am I going to lose followers if I don't say anything? So instead I'll put a black square and I'll say Black Lives Matter, and I'll post a photo of myself at a protest, because in that moment, strangely enough, positioning yourself closer to black people would benefit you in that moment and would give you more privilege. 2 months later, forget about it. Don't say anything, because then you might get the Trumpers mad and you're going to lose followers again.
No, Becca, you spotted June 2nd. Honestly, this is the fun. June 2nd is all I scroll back to on people's Insta pages now, because
it's like, can I follow them or not? Let me see.
Because, and it's interesting. I go to June 2nd. If there ain't a black square, then I go and I look a little bit further. Maybe let's see if something happened since then. And some folks, you know what? They maybe didn't post that black square, but they posted a bunch of stuff afterwards. And I'm like, okay, good on you. That's actually more useful. That's some information. That's a page that I can follow now. But then there are those folks who post their black square and then they go back to their all beautiful white content. And I'm like, ooh, you know, you could have given someone else access to some of them followers for a couple of days, maybe lifted their voice up a little bit. And it's hard, you know, it's like we're living in this different age of what influencing means. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because it is powerful. You know, you have this amplified platform, and you have the possibility of confronting some of those folks who may not know what privilege is, and just softballing it to them. That's all we're asking for. I'm not saying you need to go straight into their DMs and be like, hey, Logan from Minneapolis, let's do this. Get on the FaceTime with me. I'm going to convince you one at a time. Like, no, I'm just saying, post something every once in a while that gets Logan from Minneapolis. I hope you're listening. Welcome. To think about this stuff. Absolutely. I hope Logan, I hope he and his girlfriend are listening together. But, you know, get them to just be exposed to different voices, and how that just can be so influential for them to just be like, you know what? I never heard a panel of multiracial people talking about their racial experience. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to be perfect. You know, that doesn't mean I'm going to be perfect from here on out, but I might think critically about this a little bit.
Yeah. And I want to add on to that. The performative activism since the Black Square is so real. Mm-hmm. And I do the same thing as Anthony. I'm scrolling. I'm like, who has the Black Square? I'm like, who has it? But then also within my own friend group, I'm finding so a lot of people from my small town, right? Everyone's saying there was no racism. I don't see race, or I don't see color. Now everyone's posting a Black Square 10 years later. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, what do you have to say? They posted their Black Square. Maybe they posted how to be an ally on their story, right? First week of June, and is now October, November. And I'm like, where are you? Are you here? And I'm not saying that it has to be public. I'm not saying that the work that you're doing to dismantle anti-Black racism has to be public, but you also have to show support because it is about sharing resources. It is about uplifting the Black community. It is about supporting people of color, the Indigenous community. And being an ally is working within yourself as well, but also sharing. Like, I'm like, what is so wrong with sharing an article that you read about anti-Black racism to your Instagram story? Oh, because it's not trending like it was in June. So I've had to almost want to get into debates with people because I'm just like, hey, what are you up to now? Like, what are you doing now, months later that you posted your Black square? Because I'm seeing how real performative activism like is. It's people really just trying to stay face or trying to stay on trend to anything that's happening in the media or pop culture and just trying to stay like in the balance. And then to not do it is seen as like, oh, you have a problem with racism, but it's equally not good if you're not sharing how you're growing.
Right.
Because it is still positive. Like, I feel like if you're going to share how you're growing, why are you embarrassed about it? Why don't you want to share it? So
because maybe it's only about what benefits someone, right? And maybe that's the root of it, is like people are making choices that just personally benefit them in the moment rather than actually being interested in benefiting people who need the benefits.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned earlier the emotional labor of it. And it's like, who does the emotional labor of these conversations fall upon, whether it's in an online space or in a person-to-person space, which we're not in so much these days. But yeah, I think that is the work of being an ally, is taking, as a white person who has less at risk in these conversations, to take on that emotional labor to say, hey, white friend, white person to white person, that thing you posted, that thing you said, that was not cool, instead of making it fall on your Black friend to do that work.
Eleanor, were you saying something?
I was gonna sort of add, I learned this term just the other day, hyperactivism, which is super, like, I'm in Seattle and I feel like I see a lot of that in Seattle. And it's basically where white allies will occupy this space and essentially just drown out the voices of those whom they are fighting for, advocating for. And it sort of has caused the movement, I would say here in Seattle specifically, where I'm at, to lose some of its integrity, because those who are being affected from what's going on directly are being drowned out and are not being heard.
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely feel like it was when everything did happen, and after the murder of George Floyd, and you're seeing all the Black squares, it seemed to go, either it was performative or then, like you were saying, the drowning out of voices, which is then the other extreme. And I'm wondering, for our white listeners, I'm trying to think the best way to put this, but if we're in a situation where, okay, now we're wanting to be allies, right? Now we want to be allies. Can we talk about emotional labor? What does that look like? What's the best way? How would you all feel most comfortable with someone trying to be an ally, but then wanting to get information? Like, how did you feel about this? How did you feel about this? You know, because sometimes I know, even with Bekah and I, when we're having these conversations, and you all were so wonderful to be willing to come on, but then you wonder, okay, am I asking too much emotional labor from someone and putting that on them? Like, can someone speak into that?
Also, just to piggyback on that, I read in Kevin Patterson's book, who we had on, he wrote the book Love is Not Colorblind. In that book, he touched on how sometimes, like, a microaggression or asking someone to do emotional labor is simply asking them something because they're this marginalized group. Like, maybe you're not asking me like, oh, tell me about your trauma, you know, like being marginalized, but maybe it's even like, oh, how do you feel about this? Like, or what, you know, and that goes into, you know, tokenizing, when you're asking someone, whether it's like a queer person or a Black person or Hispanic person or whatever, because they are, you know, you're almost like it's like the opposite of saying you're not colorblind. It's like then only fixating on that person's color as the only identifying factor of who they are. So then all they become to you is like, you know.
For me, it always boils down to homework, self-reflection, and then true, honest relationship building. That, you know, I think of, when I think of the number one microaggression I've received in my life, surprise, surprise, I've never met a stranger. I love meeting new people. I'm very boisterous. I know you all are thinking how wonderful of a human being. No, but how many times, some of you who are light skinned, who are listening or are on the call right now, what are you, Anthony? What are you? You know, and that is that categorization.
It comes from a curiosity.
Yes,
it's like,
absolutely.
I just want to engage with you about your culture. What are you?
Absolutely. And I go, I know what you're trying to say, but the emotional labor is, I know what you're trying to say and I'm taking care of you right now, but I'm covering up the fact that question makes me feel like a Martian who is not human. And so, you know, for me, it's always homework. I always ask, what have you read?
Your stack of books.
Beautifully color-coded books behind.
With all hymns.
Absolutely. Color-coded because they need to look cute. But every other book is probably race-related or gender-related or about, it's like, there is plenty out there, whether it is, published or it is on a Twitter feed or it exists out there. There is no excuse for you not to be able to do your homework before you go and engage in the second step, which is that self-reflection. Why do I want to know this? Is it genuine because I'm curious? Or is it just because I have this selfish desire that I need to have it categorized for me? And if it passes that test of, you know what, I genuinely want to know more. I'm curious from a humanistic standpoint.
And I have this relationship with the person,
yes,
right?
and that's the final thing. Yeah.
And I'd also like to go off of what Anthony said. Like, yes, like they'll be like, let me just like, what are you? And let me just like run my hands through your hair and like get my hands stuck in your hair and then say something offensive like, why are my hands stuck in your hair? Well, but anyways, yeah, so you need to, like, I know when to disengage. I know when people are not genuinely asking because they care. I know when people are just asking because they're trying to start an argument, and that's when you just disengage because it just gets so stressful, and then you start getting anxious and getting panicky and tight. But I was going to definitely say they need to do their own research, like listen to a podcast, listen to like Rachel Lindsay and Van Lathan talk about it because they talk a lot about it, and Black people and people who support the Platinum Plan and why, and then read books, just like Anthony said. So like just do it yourself. And then if you want to have a conversation with the person, just don't make it too heavy.
Yeah, I would say like growing up, for me, the emotional labor was like being the only Black kid in my class. And prior to me coming to the school, they hadn't even talked about Black history. That was not even talked about. So my mom demanded that they to start discussing Black history. But what that turned into was that the teacher was like, okay, now we're going to talk about race. Shmiso, like, do you want to?
Like you were the consultant.
And I'm in like 7th grade. And I'm explaining like racism, segregation, oppression to people. And it was traumatizing. And I've realized like my passion, I've graduated with a bachelor's in psychology. I worked in early childhood education. I'm a former nanny. So my passion is working with children and understanding that the root of trying to get other children of minority to not bear that labor is to teach children about race, to have open discussions about race. The daycare that I worked at was amazing with having these open discussions about kids from different cultures and having these kids from different cultures talk about or express anything like that's unique about their culture, or teach the other kids some like phrases or words that they might know. There were also kids who just didn't even speak any English at all. So it's part of us as educators to learn their language and not to assume that they're just going to speak English. But bearing that emotional labor all these years of always having to be the one to explain Black culture, always having to be the one to let them know like why one day I came to school with 18-inch Brazilian hair and the next week I came to school with braids. It was like
because it was beautiful.
I would just get so tired. I told people, I'm like, go watch Good Hair. Like I can't anymore. I'm like, just go. Like, and now I'm realizing that the work that I want to do to talk to people about it, and having friends come up to me years later and say like, I'm so sorry for these racist things I said to you in the past. I'm willing to have those conversations because I am seeing that people are wanting to grow. But there is that difference of people who don't want to do the work and almost just want you to push them with like resources, and also having those open conversations with people because they want to also learn from your own personal experience and also how they can be a better ally as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think if people want to be like allies, first things first, we have to recognize that there's a problem and that racism exists. That's the first thing into wanting to become an ally. There's systematic racism and people don't want to see it. And it is what it is. We live in a racist country. It's true. We do. And saying that we don't, it's just living in ignorance. We need to acknowledge that there's a problem, but we need to acknowledge how to fix it, because we see politicians and I remember, and I'm never gonna forget this, when Trump started his campaign and he's like, we're gonna build a wall because Mexico, when Mexicans come, they don't send the finest people, they send rapists, they send drug addicts, they send criminals, and let's build a wall. And it's like, so there's a drug problem, let's build a wall so Mexico can stop it. Or like we have a terrorism problem, it's the Muslims, problem. There's crime in a certain area, it's the African Americans that live in that area. No, we have to recognize there's a problem. What's causing this problem? I mean, you're saying that Mexico brings in all of the drugs, but you never analyzed, well, what makes the United States the number one country in the world that has drug problems? Because drugs are also not coming here illegally. There's an opioid crisis because of doctors are prescribing a lot of opioids and a lot of drugs that people don't really need. But instead of seeing the problem, you're like, let's build a wall. This is how we fix it. This is how the drugs are going to end if we build a wall.
Right. It's like there's a common denominator here. It's not all the other people around our country.
Exactly. And again, living in the border, I mean, there's already a wall there. I mean, we have the river and you can see like across it, you can see the houses and it's Juarez, and there's already a wall, and people started to build a wall foundation and they want to make a thicker wall. It's like building a wall, it's not going to stop the drug problem in America. And instead of like, because I've seen stories, it's like, it's because my son died of, drug abuse. I'm sorry that your son died of drug abuse. I truly am, but Mexico might not be responsible for it.
Maybe
it might be
maybe
it might be big pharma. It might be the doctor that he was lazy, and instead of like, seeing a full evaluation, it's like, I'm just gonna give him like 3 times whatever, and he's gonna get fixed like that, and I don't have to see him ever again. Or there's Muslims trying to build their temples, and it's like, Muslims, they're bringing terrorism. They're the 9/11. It's because of Muslims, and no, I mean, we have to recognize there's a problem. We're part of it, and we need to fix it. And what's the root of that problem? Muslims are not the reason why there's terrorism. In Mexico, it's not the reason why there's drugs. Black communities are not the reason why there's crime. What truly is the reason? And you don't even have to go that far. You can just go grab a history book. If you want to learn that, if you say that there's no racism, like first example, like I always say, like slavery, there's racism right there. Like there's the Braceros program. People might not know that. There was this program many years back where Mexicans were building their railroad system right here in the South. And they were promised American citizenship, and they were promised like they weren't even promised to get paid. Like, and if they got paid, they got $1 a day, and that's saying too much. And then when the railroads were finished, they got deported back to Mexico. The railroads, nobody talks about that. We need to be open, and we need to educate ourselves, because we live in a world where we have the technology like right here. Like if we don't know something, we can just Google it like right here. If you don't want to learn it, it's because you don't want to.
And what's powerful is, as you're telling us this sort of examination looking back, Chemiso is handed this gorgeous, gorgeous melanated child that I am just wanting to just, and that's our future. That's our shared future. You know, that at the end of the day, all we are trying to get to is a place where this angel, look at that
big smiles.
That this little angel is given his shot to you know, do what he has to do and make it amazing. But I simply want to say we all need to be taking care of ourselves, all of us, no matter our identities. That, you know, we are living through hard times. This pandemic is not easy on any single one of us. And this election has been hard on all of us, no matter who you are voting for, who you have voted for. But we have to, you know, take this moment of self-care, because this baby represents we
want to build a better future for everyone.
We're working
the best.
Yeah, we all have to keep doing this work. That to be an anti-racist means that we simply acknowledge where we are, and we have to get into the fight and make things better. And that's okay, that it's okay that it's going to be difficult, but that baby is worth it. We are, you know, all of our future generation is worth it.
Mm. Well, listen, here's the thing. We have so many, first, thank you so much. So many beautiful voices on this panel. I know there's numerous people, so we didn't get to hear deeply about each and every one of you. I know, for instance, Catherine, you had your list of books. I want to hear it. If it's all right with everyone here, and we can talk then off camera if it's not. But Broads, if we could put social medias, etc., in the episode notes. If you want to share certain resources or books that you wanted to before, you can send them to me, and we can have them all in the episode notes and post about it all day of. But we want to be able to hear from all of you more. And thank you so much for this conversation. I know it's, you know, we're just barely putting a little toe in.
A drop in the ocean.
But to be able to hear from all of you, and I think for so many of our listeners, there's a family here. We've had so many listeners, especially, for instance, on our Facebook group, who've connected. And so to hear from like Broad family, and for you all to be willing to share and be vulnerable, it means so much. And yeah, thank you, truly.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for providing the platform for us to share.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
This is the first Broad Squad panel, and
I think it went pretty well.
Thank you.
Thank you
all so much. And Broads, again, we will be having a part 2 that will be coming out
with a whole new panel.
A whole new panel next week, next Friday. That's 11/14, I think. Wow. Just pulled that one off the top.
Birthday.
Happy birthday, Catherine!
Hello. Well, Broads, we love you. Again, we're recording this on Monday, so we don't know, what happened Tuesday. We're not sure where we are, but right now we know we have some ideas of how we can move forward as a community together, work on being allies, being anti-racist. Thank you all so much.
Hillary Clinton, right?
And Broads, chat soon.
Chat soon.
Bye.
Guys.